Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely unpack the ultimate business problem. And honestly, it's a big one. How do you truly know if an investment you make today is actually worth the cost tomorrow? We're diving deep into the mechanics of discounted cash flow, which is quite literally the heartbeat of corporate finance and investment strategy.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a classic parable. Imagine a master goes away on a trip, right, and he leaves his money with his servants. Two of them smartly invest it and double their money. But the third guy, the servant who received £100, well, he just dug a hole in the ground and hid the money for safekeeping. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth is an ancient story sitting right in the middle of a corporate finance text? Because that servant completely ignored the most fundamental rule of finance. Time is money. Wealth isn't just about how much cash you're holding. It's about what that cash can actually do over time.
So here is our game plan for This Explainer. We're going to cover why time is actually money, the magic of discounting, how to value free cash flow, calculating the net present value, and the internal rate of return, before wrapping up with some really common dangers and errors you'll want to avoid.
All right, Section 1, time is actually money. Let's start with the absolute foundation of all finance.
You know, what's genuinely fascinating is just how long it took humanity to take these ancient mathematical concepts and apply them to modern business. I mean, historical records show that the Babylonians actually understood compound interest as far back as 1800 BC. And the very first recorded reference to the net present value rule, that was published by a guy named Stephen way back in 1582. But incredibly, for centuries, this math was mostly just stuck in the realm of financial investments, like loans and life assurance. It literally wasn't until the 1950s in the US and the 1960s in the UK that discounted cash flow, or DCF, was actually widely adopted for corporate capital assets. Crazy, right?
Moving right along to Section 2, the magic of discounting. So once we accept that cash changes value over time, how do we actually compare it?
Well, the crucial thing to grasp here is that discounting is simply the mathematical engine of compounding, just thrown into reverse. Think about it. When you invest money, it compounds and grows. But when a company's trying to figure out what a future payout is worth right this very second, they have to run that exact same math backwards.
Let's imagine the journey of a pound leading us to a future expected payoff. Say a project promises to hand you exactly 133 pounds 3 years from now. On paper, sure, that looks like exactly 133 pounds of value. But we know better. That money is trapped in the future.
So, what do? We apply a 10% discount rate to represent the time value of that money. That 10% is essentially the reward that shareholders demand for accepting a delayed payoff. By doing that, we mathematically shrink that future 133 pounds back to its present value. If we reverse the compounding at 10% over those 3 years, it equals exactly 100 pounds today.
And this leads us to the big one. Before any executive approves a shiny new factory or signs off on a massive corporate acquisition, they have to answer this fundamental question. Is this investment actually wealth creating? They absolutely need to know if the present value of all the future cash they're going to make is greater than the cash they have to shell out today.
Section 3, valuing free cash flow. To answer that wealth question, we have to understand the true lifeblood of the model.
Listen, we cannot just look at accounting profits here. Why? Because they include all sorts of non-cash adjustments, like depreciation. A business might look super profitable on paper, but if all its cash is tied up in lengthy credit terms to customers, it literally doesn't have the funds to pay its own bills. We need the actual tangible cash left over. Free cash flow is exactly what remains for the directors to spend on things like dividends, debt repayment, or new acquisitions, but only after all operating and necessary investment expenditures are met. It is the genuine article of corporate valuation.
Which brings us to Section 4, the net present value. Let's look at the ultimate rule in financial decision-making that brings this whole thing together. The net present value gives us the absolute golden rule of wealth. It's so simple. If the NPV is positive, you accept the investment. If it's negative, you reject it, period. Net present value takes every single future free cash flow a project will generate, discounts it all back to today's money using the company's required rate of return, and then just subtracts the initial cost. It is a direct, no-nonsense measure of how much absolute wealth a project will add to the firm. Let's map this out in a real-world scenario. Let's compare two different investments. We'll call them the Lara project and the Carling project. Lara costs $40,000 upfront, and Carling costs $50,000. Now, they both generate a stream of future cash savings over 3 years. Lara brings in $16,000 a year, and Carling brings in $17,000. Now, if we just added up the raw numbers, we'd be completely ignoring the time value of money. We have to apply our discount rate to those year 1, 2, and 3 inflows, dragging them all the way back to year 0.
Only then can we see which project truly creates more wealth today.
Section 5. Internal rate of return. But hey, what if a manager simply asks you, what percentage yield am I getting on this money?
Well, this brings us to the internal rate of return, or IRR, which serves as a massively popular yield metric for businesses. Sometimes figuring out the exact right discount rate to calculate your NPV is, well, it's tricky. The IRR just flips the equation. By trial and error, it finds the specific discount rate where the project breaks exactly even, meaning where the present value of the future benefits perfectly matches your initial cash outlay. So if your required rate of return is 10% and the IRR formula spits out a 12% yield for the project, boom, you accept the project.
But here's the catch. While IRR gives us a neat, super easy to understand percentage yield, NPV gives us absolute wealth creation. For decades, the IRR method was definitely the popular kid in school. But recently, there's been a massive shift toward the NPV method. Today, virtually all large firms employ NPV because it's just theoretically better. Think about it. You can't spend percentages at the grocery store, right? You spend absolute wealth, and NPV measures exactly how much absolute value a decision adds to the company.
Section 6. Dangers and common errors. We absolutely have to shift gears now and look at what happens when this pristine math goes horribly, horribly wrong in practice.
Because let's face it, a mathematical model is only as good as the numbers you feed into it, and companies routinely sabotage their own investments by making some incredibly basic errors. A massive one, mismatching tax assumptions. Like, they'll calculate discount rates on a pre-tax basis but then run the operating cash flows after tax. Or another classic, ignoring inflation entirely. Managers will project future cash flows using today's flat money, but then discount them using a hurdle rate that actually includes inflation. That's mixing money costs with real rates, and it unfairly shrinks the value of their future cash flows, leading them to reject perfectly good projects. Oh, and don't even get me started on wrongly including interest charges in the operating cash flow. That just double counts the cost of capital. And finally, entirely ignoring the value of future investment options. It's a minefield.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. We've seen how discounted cash flow evolved from an ancient Babylonian concept into the ultimate toolkit for modern corporate strategy. But remember, a model is merely a reflection of the reality you feed it. So the next time you're looking at an investment appraisal, you have to ask yourself, is your discounting math actually built on a solid foundation of reality? Or are those precise, beautiful formulas just masking dangerous, unchecked assumptions?